since LFA days, and I'm awed by what they've built here, and it's just a tremendous honor for me to be reading here. And thank you, Peg, for that. This is a novel set in a small Massachusetts village in the 1830s. This is about 1835. It's about two. Let me try to press this now. Every time I try to describe, sum up my novels, I wander into strange trajectories. Gideon Bertzel is a young seminary student obsessed with language. He courts and eventually marries a young woman named Sophie, a minister's daughter, who is of earth as he is of air. And as his preoccupation deepens into obsession, Gideon becomes affiliated with a charismatic schoolmaster named Leander Soloway, and they decide that they are going to actually construct a model of Eden in which to perform a very radical experiment. But in order to perform this experiment, they need a child. And Sophie is their means of producing a child, and there has been some difficulty in producing this child on schedule. So, so this is the scene in the study where they're going to work on this problem. This is from a chapter called Small Red Room. 2 Sundays ago, they moved her easel into the study, a liberty she never dared ask of Gideon. This afternoon, at Leander's request, Sophie is rendering the room. She has told him she is no better at interiors than at capturing faces. My walls will slide into my floors, no matter how hard I try to separate them, she warned. Perspective is quite beyond me. Outdoors is easier. The trees give me clues. Gideon and Leander exchanged one of their smiles, and Gideon took out his little book and wrote down what she said. He does this often now, inscribing her most commonplace remarks, as if they were the droppings of a sage, precious for the mere fact of who produced them. She finds it disconcerting. Oh, that bugaboo perspective, Leander said. I assure you it's nothing but the devil's trick. Sleight of hand, sleight of eye, it's all the same foolery. No different from now you see it, now you don't, I divert my students with on rainy days. Forget the deceiving imp, dear girl, and paint what you see. So she is painting away, quickly and with a broad brush, laying down thick swaths of color with a child's abandon. She isn't even trying to make it true, only to slap the images down as her eyes take them in. Papa's desk, now Gideon's, with its row of massive black tomes, leaning shoulder to shoulder like mourners at a funeral. The engraving table squat to the center, suspended in air along with the wood stove. The braided rug, their rug, levitated like a magic carpet. Sophie brings these floating objects back to earth with a few stark stripes for floorboards. She ignores the blandishments of the serpent, urging her to consider the vanishing point. And where the stripes end, ventures a bold line across and down each side. Behold the walls! The room is like the inside of a treasure box, filled with curiosities. The window is an afterthought here, an intruder in her snug little container. She fills in the white square with feathery strokes of green, a reminder of the burgeoning spring that awaits them outdoors. When the painting is done, Sophie pushes her chair back from the easel to see what she has wrought. She can't help laughing. Her innocent eye has begotten a bad dream of a room, but she feels as tender toward her creation as a mother might feel toward a newborn with a hair lip. She loves it for its flaws. Leander and Gideon have been lingering nearby, watching her work while they pretend to do other things. She's been performing for them, taking her revenge for their ogling. They observe her. It is the price she pays for being admitted to their conversation. In their presence, she feels like one of Micah's animals, admired for her oddities. They praise her for what she does poorly and shake their heads over her better efforts. "You were thinking too much," Leander said the other day, dismissing one of her old landscapes. "Why make a slavish copy of the world when you can see it fresh?" She can tell by the expression on their faces that she's done well this time. "Marvelous," Leander says. "Such exuberance. You are a prodigy in reverse, Sophia. You have not lost your child's eye. You go back to go forward, and so must we all." Gideon is more restrained. He bends and drops a kiss on her head, as if she were, in fact, the infant savant they fancy her to be. A great improvement on the original. I think we should hang it here and feast our eyes on its colors with these dull old walls close in on us. Sophie stifles the pang she feels when Gideon condescends to her in front of Leander, reminds herself that in an hour or so he will not be treating her like a child at all. "Since I've been so clever," she says, "perhaps you won't mind if I paint outdoors tomorrow. I am confident I can ruin the garden, too." Suddenly Leander is up and shrugging his coat on in haste, as if a clock chimed the hour in his head. "Be happy, children," he says at the door. Lately it is this way whenever he visits. Sophie suspects secret signals, but fends off the notion. It is unbearable to think that the schoolmaster arranges their intimacy, that he intrudes even here. Gideon closes the curtains. He fiddles with a bolt on the door, rusty because no one ever used it until now. He lights the lamp on the desk, keeping the flame low, and scrawls on one of the papers strewn across the surface. Sophie waits, quiet in the corner. Difficult to gauge his mood today. He isn't agitated. His movements are leisurely. He has perhaps expended himself in talking. No matter how still she tries to be, her heart always starts to jump at this moment. She knows how the mole feels when the owl circles lazily overhead. Not so long ago, their lovemaking was soft and slow, his touch careful, as though he feared to damage her. She had been the bold one then, her mother's daughter, teasing him and showing her saucy side, but only to bring him on. At times, he seemed to be somewhere else, but she told herself that this was his lofty nature. Angels may condescend to fleshly pleasure, but they cannot relish it like ordinary men. These days, he's a different sort of angel, avenging. He has a mission to complete, and in his service he becomes the lover that Solomon sang about, terrible as an army with banners. There has always been a coldness in him, but it was of the mind, a will to know, clear and pure as a block of ice. Now that same will is lodged in his body, and she is the object, or the means. They do things together that she's never heard or thought of, shaming things that stay with her all the next day as she goes about her work. If it's a child he wants, she would like to tell him that the straight path is as effectual as the twisted. Even if for them, it isn't so. He is smiling, a good sign. "You have a smudge of paint on your face," he says. "The first time I saw you with your easel, it was a streak of green. I remember thinking how natural it looked, your true character showing through." Sophie wants to ask why exactly her character had a botanical hue, and whether the shade has changed over time. Instead, she says, "What color am I today?" "Carmine, I think, across one cheek, like a savage." He looks around. "Now, don't wipe it away. We can use a touch of color in this drab room, don't you think? I don't care how the room looks so long as it is ours." She feels offended as if he had criticized her dress. Plain enough, Lord knows. She should at least have taken off her apron, which bears the stains of a week's cooking along with splotches of paint. Quickly, she unties it and tosses it to the floor. Gideon shrugs off his jacket, lets it drop. Without intending to, Sophie has set things in motion. Obediently, she begins to undo the fastenings at her neck, but he puts his hand over hers to stop her. "Let's pretend we're in the room you painted," he says. She doesn't have a chance to ask what he means. He takes her by the shoulders and pushes her against a wall, pulls up her skirts. When she cries out, he presses his mouth into hers and feeds her own words back to her. The walls will slide into the floor. He says this again and again, timing it to his thrusts. Words break into pieces. Only fragments reach her ear. The walls will! The walls will! He brings her down to the floor to finish, groaning as he gives the last of what is in him. Afterward, he is too spent to leave her. Sophie puts her arms around him and strokes his back as best she can, pitying him for his emptiness. They were lower than the beast tonight. Her spine is a long bruise. Every crevice in her body is sore. But something has been planted. She feels instantly and unaccountably strange. Her juice is muddled like one of Papa's homemade wines. And yet, lit from within, Mama said she always knew. Sophie wonders whether the study might be an anteroom to this new world Gideon and Leander are always talking about. The old certainties still in place but upended. We must go back to go forward, Leander says, sink low to accomplish our higher purpose. Her eyes, shut all this time, open wide. Above her, the ceiling spins, or is it the floor?